Rumplestiltskin, retold by Olive Jones, illustrated by Francesca Crespi. One day, a poor miller was lucky enough to be talking with the king. In order to impress him, the miller bragged about his daughter. "And what's more, your majesty," he said, "she can spin straw into gold." His words were false, but the miller never thought that he would have to prove them. Upon hearing such a wonder, the king wanted to meet this talented daughter right away. So the next morning, the miller brought her to the castle. "Perhaps the king will think that she is so beautiful he'll forget all about the gold," he said to himself. But the king did not forget. He led the girl to a room full of straw, with just enough space for a spinning wheel and a spindle. "By morning, I want all this straw spun into gold," he ordered, "or you will die." Left alone, the miller's daughter sat and wept. Suddenly, an odd little man appeared in the room. "Stop your crying," he said. "I'll spin the straw into gold for you, if you'll give me your necklace." Marveling, she handed him her necklace. The little man sat down at the spinning wheel and fed the straw into the spindle. The big wheel had gone around only 3 times before the bobbin was full of spun gold. Another bobbin was filled, then another. Then soon there was no more straw left and only a pile of glittering bobbins. As soon as the sun had risen the next morning, the king hurried into the room. He could scarcely believe his eyes, for there in front of him was gold and more gold. And he immediately led the girl to another room, a bigger room full of straw. "All this must be spun into gold before nightfall," he said, "or you will die." The girl began to cry, and again the little man appeared and spun the straw into gold. She gave him her ring in return for his work. At nightfall, the king returned to the room, emptied of straw and filled with gold bobbins. He was delighted. If this girl were my wife, there would be no ends to my riches, he thought. Turning to her, he said, "If you will spin me one more roomful of straw into gold, I will marry you." The third room was the biggest of all. Once more, the miller's daughter sat among the straw, weeping helplessly. When the little man appeared, she could think of nothing more to give him for his labor. "I can wait," he said. "You'll be the queen very soon, and then I'll take your first baby. Fair's fair, and that's a bargain." The girl had no choice but to give the little man his demands. The straw was turned to gold as before, and in the midst of her relief and joy, the girl had forgotten all about her promise. Soon there was the excitement of a wedding, and the bride was dressed in an exquisite gown, and the palace was ablaze with lights as hundreds of guests came to celebrate the special occasion. A year later, the queen had a beautiful baby, and the king was overjoyed, and the queen was so happy that she thought of nothing else. But one day the little man appeared suddenly in her room. "Now give me what you promised," he said, and the queen was terrified and offered him vast sums of money if only he could leave her the baby. The little man would not listen, and finally her tears moved him to take pity on her. "I'll give you 3 days," he said, "and if at the end of that time you cannot give me or guess my name, you must give up the baby." The queen sent messengers through the kingdom and the land in search of names. She made a great list of them, from the most ordinary ones like Tom, Dick, and Harry to the most strange like roast ribs, sheep shanks, and spindle legs. For 2 nights, the little man listened to the queen read off her list, and to each and every name he replied, "No good." On the 3rd day, a messenger hurried to the queen, eager to tell his news. He had seen a little house on a high hill in front of a fire, and hopping around the fire on one leg was a comical little man singing, "King, queen, messengers, 'tis all the same. They'll never guess, Rumplestiltskin's my name." The queen couldn't believe her good fortune and thanked the messenger heartily. Later that day, when the little man strutted into the queen's room, he was the picture of confidence. "You haven't found out my name," he said, "so I'll take your baby now." "Could it be Rumplestiltskin?" asked the queen. And the little man was so angry that he stamped his right foot hard enough to drive it into the ground above his knee. Then he seized his left foot with both hands in such fury that he split it in two, and that was the end of Rumplestiltskin.